Listen, man, look. I'm just gonna say a few words about Doom before you get started. In about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. Listen, MF Doom, man, I first got my introduction to him like I would say late high school, early college when the I think it was Operation Doomsday album had come out. That was a long time ago. I mean, I might have been maybe I was in middle school. I don't even remember, but I wasn't really paying attention to it too much because I didn't understand hip hop on that deep of a level. But it just looked like this comic book supervillain was on the cover. But it wasn't until Mad Villainy came out that I was like, wow. And I still was on more. I was on more popular hip hop artists at the time, but I had an older friend who was a big Doom fan who was trying to get me to really listen and to take in what was really going on. And when I started to listen with my new ears, as I started to understand more and more about the craft and the art form, the art of rhyming, I started to hear some brilliance from this guy, and I understood very quickly that he was a rapper's rapper. It was like every bar was like this condensed story within each bar, and it was just like so many even with his amazing technique, it was like a lot of storytelling going on, which with each line it was like a contained concept in each series of lines, or every 4 bar couplet, every 4 bar quatrain, it was like a whole story going on, a whole concept in which he would play out with his words. He would also cut out a lot of the filler lines and force you to really try to pay attention to and understand what he was saying. He wasn't gonna, just drag you along to it. He's one of those guys you had to rewind and really delve deep into his lyrics to really get a greater understanding of what it was he was talking about. But one of the things I really liked about Doom is that, and watching a lot of his interviews over the time, trying to figure out why he wore the mask. He wanted to just be about music, Vic. He wanted to be about just the art of rhyme. Like at the time period in the late '90s, the mid to late '90s, the early 2000s, hip hop became much more about what brand of Ciroc you were drinking and what type of shoes you had on and what type of status you had and what your street credibility
Kind of
was.
video vixens
The
was in the
video
videos
vixens.
and all of that.
But do you rhyme good? We get caught up into all these other things, but at the end of the day,
You
what
have
the
one
music
chain
sound
or
like?
two chains later.
What the music sound like, 2 Chainz? What the music sound like? Do you rhyme good? Can you get it in? Do you get busy on the microphone? And he did it without any theatrics. He didn't even elevate his voice or use a lot of vocal inclinations. He just kept a real straight tone, monotone, and just kicked hard hitting, heavy back breaking bars. And another thing,
Incredible couplets,
incredible
incredible rhyme
couplets. Another
couplets.
thing I liked about the
Bars,
brother, like
bars.
we get caught up so much into if you're not a street MC, if you don't have gun bars, then you're not relevant. You're corny. It's nerd rap. But Doom was wrapping circles around any clown that was pushing packages from 97 to 2009. It didn't matter. MF Doom was coming for your neck, and he had a much higher skill level than most of those guys. What do you say about MF Doom in the wake of his death?
Well, for me personally, Boone was really, really a major influence of mine in that. So for myself, going way back as I was developing artistically, I've always used the advent without getting too deep into it. It came out of a psychological diagnosis of my own as a child. To where it was like, hey, you might have some kind of bipolar tendencies. And I kind of, instead of being like, hey, I guess they're going to put me on medication, like my mother was like, nah. And so I really developed all of that into various artistic personas and personalities and just channeled my own mental abilities or what was seen as disabilities into my creativity. And that's very early on started developing multi personas as an MC and as an artist. And so when Operation Doomsday came out, and I was like, plus I was a comic book nerd and loved Marvel the most, and I seen like Doctor Doom on his album cover, and it was like, whoa, what is this? And it's like, yo, these beats are freaking weird and really abstract and dope, and he's just rhyming about all kinds of weird comic book things and nerd concepts and stuff. Even before nerd was like a cool term, like he was just kind of going in on some hip hop comic book nerdism. And then after that King Ghidorah album came out, and yo was like rapping from the concept of being a giant 9-headed lizard, 7-headed lizard, and what have you, like from Godzilla. I was like, okay, this is my kind of weird shit right here. And then so really, even more than influence, MCs like MF Doom and like Kool Keith, they showed me that like there was validation in like being yourself. Like you could be as creative as you want to in hip hop. You can push the creative envelope. If you got multiple personalities, like that doesn't have to be looked at something that is like weird or negative. Like, yo, you just too weird to rap. It was validation, and you can be yourself. You can be who you are and be as creative as you want to be. You don't have to try to be like everybody else. And as someone who's always that way and always felt like, why can't I just be as weird as I want to be? For me, it was like validation. It was like, wow, like you can do that, and it can be okay. Like you don't have to feel like you're like an oddball just because you're being yourself as an artist. And so Doom was definitely one of those MCs who really like validated the kind of creativity that I was channeling and being drawn to myself. And so yeah, like I remember the Doomsday, because another thing about Doom was really dope is that he was really one of the pioneers of like independent hip hop in terms of like underground hip hop and how the internet became such a tool for the growth of the underground. Like underground hip hop, like early 90s, you're talking about something that like all of a sudden in a small frame of time expanded because of the internet. The underground went from being here to being here. It was like the underground expanded massively because of internet sites where people were buying directly from the artist. And so the underground grew. Independent artists grew so fast because all of a sudden you didn't have to rely on a label, on a major label, or being like, how do I get these records to the record stores? Like you could just sell them right off undergroundhiphop.com, right off, artorhyme.com, like various websites where like people was just buying underground hip hop.
And Doom was like the underground hip hop LeBron. Look, Doom would go to a label, say for 2 albums, and then leave, and then go to another label. 2 albums,
like,
leave.
Give me what's up front, back end sucks. You know what I mean? Like, and so even from a business standpoint, he was a trailblazer as well as creatively. He's one of the pioneers of what we know as underground hip hop. And so I remember at the time, like you would be up on stuff that people didn't know existed. So like that would kind of up your hip hop cred. Like, you heard about that MF Doom, you heard about that little brother, that Jay Dilla, that, you know what I mean, like that atmosphere, things like that. And so the average rap fan who thought like, I'm really up on hip hop, like they was up on mainstream hip hop, but like the real trailblazing, innovative hip hop that was ahead of its time and that was creating what people would be doing in the future, like that was the stuff that was on the underground. And Doom was one of the trailblazing luminaries of that. And then Mad Villainy came out, and then it all shifted to a whole another level, because people heard that album, the collaboration with him and Madlib, at a time when both of them were like being talked about. It's like, yo, have you heard this? Have you heard this guy? And they all of a sudden they had an album. It was like, whoa. And then you looked at the cover and it was like, what is this? Like weird ass mask and shit. Because it wasn't a cartoon on that cover. It was just really Doom in the mask. And it was just like, you heard that shit. It was like, oh, this is like underground fucking Illmatic. Like, what is this? And
one of the things I appreciate,
Doom, from that point on, everything changed.
And one of the things I appreciate about Doom and artists like that, even though there's no other artists that's really, really like that, he was one of a kind. I mean, you do have some other hip hop weirdos like Kool Keith, and as you mentioned before, some guys like that. But I mean, it's the ability the desire to be creative and the desire to give hip hop what it was missing at the time, and that's imagination. Thinking outside the box and rapping in a way and using the words and the language to do the ultimate, to say something without actually saying it, to describe it with the words until it forms a picture in the mind of the listener. That's the true art form of where it goes to. Talk a little bit about his technique and the extreme skill level that other artists, that other rappers seem to admire so much, and why they revere this man.
Well, for starters, what a lot of people don't know about the Doom persona and the mask and everything, he started developing that at the poetry open mics at the New Eurekan in New York.
I didn't know that.
Like he would come with like before even the first mask, before the first mask got crafted by this artist that I think he just like knew from being in the park and shit. Like he would go to the New Eurekan poetry open mic with like a stocking cap on his head, like so like people could really see his face, and he'd sign up, and then he was spitting a lot of those early Doom rhymes on the open mic to gauge people's reaction. But he didn't want people's first response to be like, "What does this nigga look like?" And he wanted them to just like, "Okay, he's weird on mask," and then just the rhymes take over from there.
Right.
And so that was where he started developing a lot of the material. And then it's really something serious about Doom. It's crazy. Is that, like, you could tell that Doom was an enlightened individual. Like Doom's third eye was open. Like Doom would talk about a lot of really like deep and like spiritual things, and like really like next level like Black revolutionary things, and like enlightened like information, about like next level shit, like on some like Doom's like this Black God shit on it'd be like woven within all of the intricate rhymes. You know what I mean? Like he throw in some shit in there, you know what I'm saying, about like Anunnaki or something, or some shit in there about like some Dr. York type shit. You could tell that he came up, you know what I mean, like in an enlightened environment where like he knew his knowledge itself was prevalent from a young age. And if you go back and you listen to the KMD rhymes, he was Zev Love X. His name was Zev Love X. Like KMD was really pushing the envelope on some Black consciousness shit.
They were.
You know what I mean? And so like with that background combined with the Doom persona and the comic book mythos, like it really created a very unique persona. Then you just add like the craftsmanship of the rhyming, you know what I mean, where he was really creating really intricate rhyme skills and abstract images, and combined with the enlightened knowledge about who he was as a Black man. Like you had this really interesting gumbo of a style and an approach that like not too many other people had, like even among the underground artists.